Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Story Hour. I'm your host, Daniel Marcus, and you can't see me right now because I'm having some technical difficulties with video. I'd have to reboot my rig in order to recover my cam, and I just don't have time to do that. But you really don't need to see me. You just need to hear me introduce our fine authors. So, again, I'm your host, Daniel Marcus. My esteemed co-host and partner in narrative crime is Laura Blackwell. And I hope that you're all healthy and safe and taking care of yourselves and each other as we emerge from a really, really strange year. I started Story Hour during lockdown, like a year and 3 months ago or thereabouts, with the intention of really just my writer friends and me just being able to share writing with each other and do readings in kind of a informal, friendly setting. And it just kind of grew. So it's been an amazing year. We've had some just phenomenal authors visiting with us and sharing their work. The idea of Story Hour is we turn to a very ancient and very time-honored form of entertainment, which is folks sitting around the fire telling each other lies. So every week we have two authors, about 30 minutes each, and we do exactly that. No Q&A, minimal self-promotion, although there's a little bit of that because we're writers after all. And also, we ask each author to tell us about a worthy cause that they would like our listeners to know about. It's really a suggestion that if you're fortunate enough to be in a position to help out, there's some direction as to how you might do that. So our fantastic readers tonight are Ruth Joffre and Steve Toase. Welcome to you both. Ruth is reading tonight for El Centro de la Raza, the Center for People of All Races. This is an organization grounded in the Latino community of Washington State. It is the mission of El Centro de la Raza, the Center for People of All Races, to build the beloved community, to unifying all racial and economic sectors, to organize, empower, and defend the basic human rights of our most vulnerable and marginalized populations, and to bring critical consciousness, justice, dignity, and equity to all the peoples of the world. It is the URL, we'll post it in the chat, but it's exactly what it sounds, El Centro de la Raza.org, I believe, but we'll post it for you. Steve is reading tonight for SASH, which is Safe and Sound Homes, and this is dedicated to preventing youth homelessness in North and East Yorkshire in the UK. They do this by providing both emergency short-term and longer-term accommodation for young people, 16 through 25, who are at risk and in need. We will post the URL, but it's https://uk.org.uk. I neglected before we started to ask which one of you would like to go first. So I'm just going to make a random judgment call, and I'm going to have Steve kick us off. Steve is originally from North Yorkshire and now lives in Munich. He writes regularly for Fortean Times, and his short stories have been published in Weird Horror, Nightmare Magazine, Shadows and Tall Trees, 8, Analog, very interesting entry among all those others, 3-Load Burning Eye. I've always wanted to crack that particular market. I never have, just because, but the title is so great. Shimmer and Lackingtons, among others. His stories have also been reprinted in Ellen Datlow's Best Horror of the Year series. His short story collection, To Drown in Dark Water, has just been published by Undertow Publications. Welcome, Steve. Take it away.
Thank you. So tonight, or this morning, because it's 4 a.m. here, I'm going to read a story called Stroy Obstvisa, which is in my collection, but was first published in the last issue of Shimmer magazine. Kate's been out on the roof again. She's drawn her finger through salt the colour of wood ash, the sigils barely holding together on the terracotta slope of the tiles. The gutters are clogged with yellow fat and dead hares whose eyes are gilded in gold leaf. Across the valley, a field of barley whitens with mould and blight. I coax her back through the casement and hold her while she whispers curse words into the damp cotton of my shoulder. Her breath smells of bonfire smoke. She does not sleep. I know where the artist's bones are, deep in the clay below the Gravenstein apple trees, root wrapped and smeared with grease. The fruit tastes slightly of marrow and damp cloth. It is not an unpleasant flavour. Something has been killing the hoopoe, leaving their plucked bodies in the orchard's long grass. Their scorched beaks have been torn free and sealed tight with honey. Kate does not come down here often, though she can see the trees from the house. I pick up the corpses, the loose feathers, and drop them into a burlap sack, the one I normally use for harvested fruit. Later, I bury their small bodies in shallow graves. I didn't mean to, Kate says, and I know she's telling the truth. He scrubbed out the salt. I don't know why he scrubbed out the salt. I look at the line going around the house. A single footprint has worn through the white powder, tread still visible. He lies on the corner of the porch, eyes wide and blinded with mould erupting through his jaw and across his tongue. Even though the cartilage in his throat has turned to dust, he still tries to speak. You need to finish what you've started. It's not right to leave him like this, to leave him for me to deal with, I say. But even as I finish speaking, I know she can't. She never can. We keep 2 large apple presses behind the house. I use the second one and later burn his uniform down at the far end of the orchard. The wind will carry the char of smoke down the valley, away from us and the town. Kate sits her back against a pollard's bark while she knits. I watch bees flit from blossom to blossom. The day is calm and bright, her needles clattering against each other. I'm glad she's come down amongst the trees. The air is full of a scent of fresh grass, crushed by our footsteps. I force the scions into the cleft cut in the rootstock, take out the chisel, and seal the graft with wax from a single red candle. Afterwards, I'm not sure how she distracted me to get at the tree, but she managed to. The glyphs are small and precise, carved with the tip of her knitting needles. I know she has good intentions. She sees the gaps in the world and needs to close them. I'm grateful. How can I not be? But I wish you would tell me, speak to me. I dig up the tree in the surrounding soil. There are still unburnt scraps of uniform in the warm embers. I push them deep into the flames as the dirt-covered roots start to smoulder. We are low on food, so I take some of last year's crop to the village to sell. Had a bonfire? Carmen in the grocer's asks. I know what she wants to know. I stay silent. I've hidden most of the scrying ingredients in the house, but Kate is inventive, instinctive. I can feel her watching, even when she isn't. Burning old scrub, I say, putting the basket on the counter. There will be extra cash too, but I will stash that away for the winter. We've seen the hut again, Rachel, glowing between the trees, Bill says. He stands by the window and does not turn as he speaks to me. I have not seen the hunting lodge appear, but it does not surprise me. I notice the clattering first. Hundreds of barbed fish hooks fall from the sky onto the road outside. This is not Fortean, but a threat. I step outside and the downfall pauses long enough for me to get to the car before intensifying once again to trap Carmen and Bill inside the store. I see their faces pressed against the lettered glass. The sky glitters. Kate has done it for me, setting the clouds on fire and letting them fall like forgotten fireworks. This won't last, you know, she says, slipping her arms around my waist. We just need to make the best of it. The streams of light twitch as they hit mist rising from the river. Already fading, I say, and she sighs, unhooking her fingers and walking away. I arrive back from the orchard and cannot get into the house. The porch is covered in wax bees, their wings fluttering against the rotten wood. The day is warm and the wax soon melts. The insects inside fall to the ground, suffocated. I try not to step on them, but there are too many, and they rasp as I make my way inside. The hives will be empty now, and many of the trees will not fruit. The artist only ever gave Kate one piece of art, an old installation never taken by a gallery. She keeps it in the cellar, no other room big enough to display it. On the day he delivered it, he pulled up the lane in a battered white van. With our help, he dragged out the hospital gurney, ants and beetles already suffocating in a thick smear of honey across the metal. After he left, Kate would eat the sweetened insects, dedicating each death to a goddess whose name only she knew. In the morning, I scour the riverbank, collecting torn shrapnel from a plane's fuselage. The registration number is scorched beyond reading. There is no one to tell. I take Kate by the hand and she leads me down to the orchard, though I am the one who asked if we could go. Paperweights of dew slide from the grass, glisten on the skin of her bare feet, and for a moment I am transfixed. We reach the orchard and it is worse. Even Kate gasps. The elm trees are no longer seedlings, their granite branches resting on the crowns of the apple trees, crushing the burlap and virouge to pulp. There are 2,000, she says. She reaches up and plucks a leaf, lets it fall. Silica in the rock glistens like dying stars. We need to be 0. They are killing the apple trees. I do not ask where the stone has come from, whether she grifted it from some family quarry in a nearby village, or erupted and cooled a volcano far through the earth. I think I can smell bone in the rock. I do not ask. Someone has been to the house. Aftershave lingers around the porch, a light reek of citrus and alcohol. I let my hand rest on the door handle, peering through the frosted glass for any bundles in the hallway that do not look like they belong. Kate is sitting on the stairs. The visitors went away, she says. Her knuckles are red raw where she's torn skin to lace. I nod. It was lucky they did. I know what she was planning to do. I'm glad she didn't feel she had to. She has found the artist's cap and is wearing it, long hair bunched up inside, sat in the dark. The room is heavy with the reek of sweat-stained wool and all his lies. When he was alive, he never took it off. The thing with lies is they have power. He knew that and wore them like ribbons. Kate uses them to create other things. These falsehoods smell of mildew. I glance at her arm and the little light coming in from the window. She is sprouting jackal fur in the crook of her elbow. I reach into my pocket for the tweezers, ready to pluck it out, hair by hair, root by blood-stained root. It's the only way, or it will spread, and she will be his by morning. Later that night, I take the hat down to the meadow and try to burn it to ash. The flames dance across the weave. I wedge it into the crook of a pear tree. I know it will be back in the attic by morning. They're not taking our apples in town anymore. They say that the crop is tainted. Kate wants to come to the town to support me. I can't let her, the way they'll react to her, the way she'll react to them. I wake up in the middle of the night and go to her room. She's sitting on the edge of her bed, window open. I can hear flies buzzing across the fruit as their offspring burrow through the apple skin. The scent is sweet and warm and collapsing. I walk across to shut the window and she says nothing. You need to stop, I say. What will happen, she replies. Her face is turned toward the floor, shadowed and hidden. I cannot tell her reaction. There is a scent of burning willow and pine. Sap bubbles out of her fingertips and drips to the floor. I tell Kate that after enough blossoms have fallen in the meadow, the artist will find his own way back through the soil to knock on the door. She asks about all the wasps that drink themselves to death on apple rot cider, slipping between worm castings and mole burrows. I do not have an answer for her that is not a lie, so instead I tell her a truth. Wasps never stay under the earth for long, dead or not, before they steal skeletal leaves for wings and return. We drive into a town. It's the first time Kate has left home in 5 years. She sits in the back, the window closed even though the day is one of the hottest of the year. I can smell myself on the recycled air inside the car. I turn us down the main street. People are sitting under parasols, drinking ice-crowded drinks and eating chemical-flavoured ice cream. They're staring, Kate says, shrinking back in her seat. They're not, I lie. It's far too warm to pay attention to anyone else. But she does not believe me. My lies are brittle children, and they do not live long around her. The beetles are small and black and crawl out from inside the doors, up over the car's windows, scratching the glass with their feet. Soon they obscure the view outside, with temperature inside climbing as the sunlight bakes their carapaces. I put on the wipers to clear the windscreen, but there are too many, and they smear as they are crushed. I slow down. I can hear them crawling along the petrol pipes, drowning in the fuel and filling the tank. Their dying bodies clog the air vents, sealing us from the world. I could explain that this spectacle of death is draping us in attention, that people who had not noticed our progress through the town centre are now leaving their houses to watch, to stare. I do not. Cars are not the only thing that can be suffocated with dying insects. We abandon it beside the road and walk home through the orchard. We need to make the circle bigger, she says. I am too distracted by looking after the fruit to pay any attention, to give her any attention. The salt crosses the track up to the path, up to the house, crystals fresh. Along the ditch are 2 rows of salt pans evaporating in the sun, stone tacky with clots. There are 2 people on the back porch. She has slit their throats with sharpened oak leaves, wrapped them in blankets that do not cover their injuries. Through the fabric, I see bones like larch poles, snapped and splintered. The last of her blood, the little she did not harvest for crystals, has seeped across the floor. Flies from the rotten apples sip their fill. What was I supposed to do? She says. I take her arm and lead her back in. Her hands are stained with yellow pollen. I do not know which flower it comes from, but I wash it down the sink. It was very quick, she says, as I scrub her hands with the nail brush. She winces as the bristles catch her knuckle scabs. I say nothing. I did not want to leave her for the night, but accountants don't come where we live. Carmen and the others must have seen my cargo, took the chance to try and stop Kate, but did not succeed. From a distance, it looks like the visitors got together to help manage the orchard, but Carmen and the others aren't pruning the tree. Accelerated branch growth has woven its way through their veins, splitting the muscle from their bones. Their teeth will be the fruit harvested in autumn. I find Kate among the windfall, arms around her knees. We need to make the circle bigger, all the way around the fields, she says. But I know that no salt circle will ever be big enough to keep the world out. Maybe we're two faces of the same monster, me and her. I hold her close and ignore the sound of shattering jaws from the canopy above. I lace my fingers through hers and lead her back to the house. Kate has covered all the furniture in calico, thick and muffled. Mice tug the fibres loose and hoard them behind the wooden slats in the walls. I stand in the middle of a room and look around at the chairs, the sofa, the cupboards, the piano. She brushes past me and sits down on the stool. Her hair is curled with honey that drips down the back of her dress. I try not to gag at the sweetness. She rests her hands on the covered keys, and underneath, hammers strike taut, muffled strings. When he made the original one, he meant it to be silent. I've barely finished speaking before I know I've made a mistake. She stands and walks over, placing each foot with grace. Running a finger through her hair, she coats my lips with honey. The sugar turns to skin, and I have no mouth. She returns to the piano stool and continues to play. Later at night, she wakes me and runs a fingernail across my face. The mouth is not mine. Her memory is not that precise, but I am glad to be able to speak. I'm sorry, she says, and I want to answer, but even with my speech returned, I cannot bring myself to reassure her. Wilted blossoms fall around us as we stand in the middle of the orchard. They're dying, I say, and she nods. The trees can only take so much grief, absorb so much death before their roots wither in the ground. I can make them come back, she says, and I appreciate her offer because it is truly given and comes from sadness, which is her most powerful ingredient, but I shake my head. Even if they do, there are no bees, I say, and before she offers to fix them too, I hug her and we sag against each other like two trees planted too close. There are roots she does not know. Roots I have massed from her with honeysuckle and knots of uncarded wool buried in old lemonade bottles, the necks sealed with glass marbles and apple pips. I buried them long ago, pressing them down into the dirt of the path, below stiles and between hawthorn trees. The fog of them gets lost in the fog of her thoughts. The basket is heavy, and split willow rods rub away the skin of my forearms. Kate is having a good day. I can come and help, Rachel, she says. She never uses my name. There are only two of us. It sounds crystallized on her tongue. I'm fine, I say. I'll be back for dinner. I have my lunch in here. She smiles, and I do not notice how brittle it is. I should not have drawn her attention to the basket. There is food in there, but not for lunch. Enough to get me beyond the hills. The route is blocked with brass rods running from thorned branch to thorned branch. She is sitting on the fence, wrapped in calico. The trees reach out and entangle me before I can move. Blood beads along my arms and hardens to ladybirds that scratch far more than any thorns. I couldn't carry on, I say. She nods and strokes my arm between the wounds to give me ease. I know, and I'm sorry. I wake up in the fruit cellar, lying on a metal gurney. It is dented beneath my spine and I cannot get comfortable. Across the room, she has arranged the artist's bones, a pile of wet soil on the concrete where she has sifted for his fingertips. Without moving, she drags the gurney toward her. The hair is nestled in her lap, blank-eyed, gold leaf crumpled against its lashes. I won't be him, you know, I say. I know, she says, smiling. I will have the best of both of you. This is a lie she speaks with a full knowledge of its nature. His skeleton doesn't quite fit in my skin. Splinters of bone embroider my muscles, which are too short to stretch across the new femurs. My own are refined powder coating my diaphragm and lungs. Already infections are spreading from the clay she did not clean from the time-pitted surface of his spine. Vertebrae are in the wrong place. I do not know if this is intentional or carelessness. There is pain, but I cannot scream. She has stitched my mouth shut to stop my face slipping from his skull. She has kept my hands free to make the new artworks he never finished. The finger bones are too long for me to hold the tools she has prepared. Soon, she will strip me back to her artist bones, and I will be little more than for fat clogging the drains. Thank you.
What a feast of beautiful and strange. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great. Oh, that one's going to stick with me for a while.
It does. It really does. I still remember the first time I read it.
You copy edited it, didn't you?
I did. I did. I don't remember having to do much to it either. Although I do remember that I had to do some fact checking in German which was very difficult because I don't read German.
So interesting how this
Hopefully I got it
come
right.
around to us again.
It is, and it's wonderful in your voice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, deep breath, short pause, let it marinate for a bit. I'm gonna get your collection as soon as we're done with Story Hour. That was really wonderful work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Our next author is Ruth Joffre. She's the author of the story collection Night Beast. Her work has appeared or is forthcoming in Kenyon Review, Lightspeed, Gulf Coast, Prairie Schooner, The Masters Review, Hayden's Ferry Review, Pleiades, and elsewhere, and will be anthologized in Best Microfiction 2021. Ruth lives in Seattle, where she serves as the prose writer-in-residence at Hugo House. Welcome, Ruth. Take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Laura. And thank you to Steve. I was enraptured by that reading. It's going to stick with me for a really long time. And you are such a great reader. And I'm so honored to be reading with you. And a little nervous to have to follow that, but that's okay. So as you might have picked up from my bio, I write in a lot of different genres between realism and speculative fiction and a lot of different forms, flash fiction and short stories, and periodically working on longer stuff. So I'm going to read a collection of different things tonight, hopefully about half an hour's worth. I will start with a flash that originally appeared in Cotton Xenomorph. It's called A Girl with Kaleidoscope Eyes, and it is from a series of flash that I'm working on called the A Girl series, and all of the stories start with the same naming convention. So a girl with kaleidoscope eyes, a girl walks on the moon, a girl wishes on a star, that kind of thing. So I will read this. A girl with kaleidoscope eyes. Hexagons, Miss Catherine said, are the most efficient tessellations. See how the bottom of this honeycomb curves to fit the inside of the jar? That's because this piece was built inside an old wood barrel the bees used for their hive. By using hexagons, the bees were able to build right up to the sides of the barrel without wasting any space. She passed the jar of honeycomb around the classroom, allowing each of us to hold it in our hands, to lift the jar over our heads and watch the sunlight filter through the raw honey like love through an amniotic sac. She had forbidden us to open the honey jar, afraid that we would spill and get our desks sticky. But for once, we did not mind being told no, for she had appeased us with plastic honey sticks in various hues and flavors. Buckwheat, coffee blossom, star thistles, clovers. Mine was blackberry. It tasted like ripe summer days and the sun-warmed fruit we mashed against our tongues as we walked to the public pool. Now it's your turn for show and tell, Miss Catherine said, addressing all of us as a group, despite our shyness, our sleepy, sugar-softened brains. It was midday, that awful hour after lunch when even Miss Catherine's kind eyes couldn't keep us from counting down the minutes until our parents picked us up or we clambered on the bus. And I was 5.5 years old, young for first grade, though not by much. I had brought something simple for show and tell. Butterfly my grandfather had carved for me out of wood from our backyard. It was delicate and thin, the wood shaved so fine I feared the butterfly's wings would snap. I carried it as if it were alive. When Miss Catherine first announced that spring show and tell 4 weeks prior, I had dreams of becoming a lepidopterist, of coming to school with a butterfly net and a magnifying glass, and showing off a collection of neatly identified specimens, their paper-thin wings pinned to a board and encased in a thick ribbon of glass. My afternoons in our backyard yielded nothing, however, and so I arrived at the school that day sullen and vaguely ashamed. I found solace in Miss Catherine's offerings and in the presentations of my classmates who brought in small personal items similar to mine, a pocket watch that had stopped ticking, a camel crocheted out of yarn, a poem one girl's mother had written on the occasion of her 6th birthday. None of these items sparked anything more than the briefest awe or wonder, my classmates and I being by and large the kind of children who like new things and like even better to forget them or leave them behind. After each presentation, we clapped and passed the item around if appropriate and waited patiently to be impressed or be offered a gift. When the last girl walked to the front of the class, we took notice because she wasn't carrying anything and because she was the girl who insisted on wearing sunglasses at all times, even inside, even when Miss Catherine turned off the lights for an in-class movie. Her reasoning for this was that she had a medical condition. Her eyes were too sensitive to UV light, her parents claimed, and she needed constant protection. Many of us had during recess come to the consensus that she was partially blind and didn't want to tell us, but we never mentioned this to her, afraid that we were right, that we'd been judged unworthy of the truth. When the girl reached the front of the class, Miss Catherine asked, "What did you bring us today?" Her expression was one of soft, expectant concern, as if prepared to assure the girl not to worry or be ashamed if she'd forgotten about the assignment. But the girl had brought something for show and tell. Her eyes. "Your eyes?" Miss Catherine said, a soft pout drawing the cliffs of her eyebrows together. "Here," the girl said, lowering her sunglasses. "Look." Miss Catherine bent down obligingly, perhaps thinking there had been another outbreak of pink eye, and she'd have to call the nurse. Instead, her mouth fell open, and after a pained moment asked, "Are those contacts?" We leaned forward, fascinated. "No," the girl explained. "The lenses are reflective. They catch the light." Miss Catherine frowned then, and in her confusion failed to say thank you, to cut show and tell short and warn us to remain in our seats before there was a quiz coming up, or because there was a quiz coming up. Instead, she let herself get lost for a moment, let the girl invite us up for a closer look, and let us file hesitantly to the front to see for ourselves. The girl's eyes were like a kaleidoscope, one boy said, the pigments in the iris constantly shifting, twisting, colors rearranging themselves into patterns so that one kid thought he saw flowers and another tiles, the brilliant hexagonal mosaics of the mosque she had visited once with family overseas. Myself, I saw none of these things, nor did I write it off as just some trick generated with computers and holograms. In the kaleidoscope, I saw wings, legs, the writhing, shuddering mass of insects so minuscule that when brought together, they looked like an ordinary eye. Here the iris, here the pupil, here the whites laced with red as if she had not slept. In the girl's wide smile, I saw no weariness, no pain, no direct indication that I should be afraid. But when I looked into her eyes, I knew the insects inside her mind were watching me. They had been all year. So that was the first thing I wanted to share. Thank you. It was inspired by a news story that I saw of a woman who had a very tiny bee living in her eye. And it was horrifying. So I had to write this story. It terrifies me even to read it. So I hope I was able to deliver that. I'm next going to read another flash from a different series in my collection, Night Beast. I like to show off the cover because I think it's gorgeous and sexy and creepy. So this flash originally appeared in Juped and is part of a series called One of the Lies I Tell My Children, and they're all numbered. And so this lie is number 5. If they do not clean their room, pretty soon it will be declared a health hazard, and systems will be installed in and around the area to prevent the spread of slime mold from the air conditioner to the attic. In the mornings, when they get dressed for school, my children will have to pass through a decontamination chamber where I will scrub them and disinfect them, and where they will ask in their weary voices, "Is this really necessary? The slime mold is our friend." At night, its black, iridescent fingers will feel around the surfaces of the room, eventually creeping its way onto their pillows and their sheets, and they will encourage it with the sugar water and the potato chips they deliberately smear over their faces. In the beginning, the slime mold will be wary of the offer and retreat every morning when the alarm goes off and I come knocking on their door. Then gradually it will grow comfortable with the arrangement and grow stalks inside their nostrils, which will be jellied and metallic, giving the appearance of nose rings or other piercings. When summer arrives, the children will have no reason to go outside and will hide in their room, feeding their new mold pet, giving it swaths and patches of their flesh for it to stretch out and grow spores. One day the mold will take over and what were once children will become host beds for the oozing aromatic fungus creeping up between their toes. And because I love them and know how much they love to be dirty, I will hook them up to saline drips with glucose and allow the mushrooms to grow in the recesses of their body. It will be a slow process, occurring gradually over weeks and months, and necessitating a great deal of patience and understanding from me. Eventually, when school starts, my children will not be able to get out of bed, so I will stand over them, wishing I could see their hair under all the fungus. I will reach my hand out to stroke them, and in their strange unicellular way, the slime molds will reach back like flowers to the sun. So that's that story. I am next going to read from a longer piece called Safekeeping. When it was first arranged, her lover said she would be safe. The apartment was designed just like a vault. No matter what happened, the doors would lock, the water would run, and the overhead lights would continue to shine in their metallic, cage-like sconces. The whole world could descend into nuclear winter, and the apartment would remain a comfortable 72 degrees, except for the cold spot in the bathroom and the call of heat around the oven whenever she made her dinners. There was a lifetime supply of dehydrated food in the cupboards and an intercom should she need to request anything, though where the intercom led and who it was connected to, she did not know. Once or twice she tried pressing the button and shouting, "Hello, hello," but there was no answer. There was nothing she needed anyway. Everything had been provided for, except her loneliness. They had staged it like a kidnapping. A broken window, signs of a struggle. Her lover even drew a blood sample to plant her DNA on the carpet where investigators would see it and presume her kidnapper had been violent. Partial footprints, men's size 9 Georgia boots with thick commando lug soles made it look like the kidnapper had approached through the garden and lain in wait until she returned from her daily office hours on campus. That he waited in her bedroom, pawing through her closet and underwear drawer, both of which were left open, was meant to mislead investigators, make them believe that the suspect was some kind of sexual predator, a deviant whose subterranean desires made him statistically unlikely to be found, even if investigators had limitless time and resources, which they did not. Manpower was scarce, and without any real leads, there was little detectives could do. Their investigations stalled out quickly. Memorials were held. Friends and family paid their respects. Many had a hard time accepting the official story of her disappearance, and none of them learned the truth. Her lover stayed behind to make sure of that. Prior to going underground, her lover provided her with a packet of fake identities, falsified birth certificates, identification cards, passports, records of immunization, diplomas. Given that the safe house was located 100 meters underground, it was very unlikely that anyone would ever find her. And in the event that they did, she was instructed never to divulge her birth name, not even if the person or persons who located her claimed to work with her lover at Hardwater, the private military contractor that employed her lover as a cybersecurity specialist. In fact, her lover had personally designed, tested, and built all the automated systems in its very bunker, which was Hardwater's signature product. Hundreds of these safe houses had been built for high-paying customers, businessmen, diplomats, military leaders, in anticipation of the war. Her lover had hidden this location from Hardwater by hacking into their systems and masking her virtual communications with the construction team, which he had handpicked from the company's pool of civilian laborers. To them, this project was just one of many, and there was no reason to believe otherwise or to suspect that the man funding it was just a fiction. To Hardwater, it didn't exist, just as she herself didn't exist. Her lover insisted she have no contact with the outside world. To maintain the ruse that she was missing, presumed dead, her parents could never know she was alive. She could never call their house on Christmas morning or ask them out to dinner. When their birthdays came on June 4th and August 9th, she could not climb the staircase and leave the safe house to see them, at least not if she wanted to come back. That was why she stayed. The thought that her lover might return and build a life with her there in the comforts of their own home. It could be welcoming in a strange, programmable way. All the windows were artificial, their screens designed to alter with each season. So in the spring, there were lilacs, and in the fall, colors. Still, on those mornings when she knew it was winter, she longed for nothing more than a glass of good mulled wine and some blankets she could wrap around her shoulders as she snuggled closer to a fire. It seemed her lover had thought of everything, except for the smell of leaves burning in a barrel and the taste of snow crabs dipped in butter. There was no recourse for nostalgia or desire. On-screen, icicles clung to telephone wires, and streets previously dotted with trash cans and recycling bins were painted white, each pixel representing 1,000 individual snowflakes in a picture only she could see. This street, that snowplow, those little kids running around the corner, none of it was real. It had all been simulated. If she put her hand on a window, it would not feel cold, though frost seemed to be choking the glass, closing in around it like a hand on a throat. Instead, the screen would ripple a bit, distorting the picture as a wave of pixels colored the snow. It could be purple, she knew, or pink, or an odd shade of orange like a finger held up to a flashlight. Someone had animated it, chosen a wholesome little street in a quiet little town where children could play outside without fear of being kidnapped or run over. She had watched the windows long enough to know that there was some continuity. Families moved in and out. Women got pregnant. Trucks broke down, kids fell off their bikes one morning, then reappeared wearing band-aids the next. Entire storylines flared up and died while she sat in her living room, counting the hours. Sometimes she felt stifled by her safety. Following a set routine helped. Mornings were for self-improvement, a high-protein breakfast followed by moderate exercise, 1/2 hour of language practice, an hour of reading, painting, a shower, some light gardening. Her apartment, as she liked to call it, came equipped with a small hothouse where she grew tomatoes and zucchini and pruned her basil plants before they flowered. Life was simpler. She no longer worried about how much nitrogen oxide had been released into the atmosphere or whether the earthworm population would rebound after the war. In this apartment, she was no longer a respected scientist, and it did not matter that in graduate school she was among the first people to witness almendro trees shrinking into their roots. The bat population was also shrinking, and with it, the almendro's primary source of guano. Following graduation, she was offered a research position and awarded a grant to support her experiments in terraforming. Earth needed recalibration, more oxygen in its atmosphere, less carbon in its oceans, a commitment to maintaining its biodiversity before its entire ecosystem collapsed. In her lab at the university, she genetically modified plants to produce 14 to 16 times the amount of oxygen per day. If given the time and resources, she might have been able to increase that tenfold, but it was too late. War loomed on the horizon. Hardwater had known ahead of time when it would begin, but had it happened? Had Earth descended into chaos? It was impossible to say. Obviously, this was written a few years ago. We are clearly in chaos now. Her lover had been gone over 6 months when she decided she couldn't take it anymore. She had to get out. Her apartment was connected to the surface by way of a tall circular staircase. Its walls were reinforced with steel to prevent collapse, and the door, a new magnesium alloy as light as aluminum and as strong as titanium, required a 10-digit passcode, a handprint, and a retinal scan. Once open, the door led directly to a tunnel to the surface. She had been blindfolded when she first arrived and didn't know where she would emerge. Her lover had supplied her with a parka, mittens, snowshoes, and pants made from water-resistant military-grade fabric. Outside, the cold wind was blistering and shrill. With her knit scarf wrapped around her mouth, she trudged toward the ruins of a small town. The mailboxes she passed on the way were riddled with bullet holes. Shards of broken glass glinted in the mounds of snow outside the abandoned storefronts. Overhead, helicopters chopped the air. They belonged to the military, which appeared to occupy this territory. What had become of the world, she wondered? Was the war still raging? Perhaps. She worried that some of the soldiers had seen her. One helicopter circled back, dipped, then pulled away to rejoin its platoon. She didn't trust them to leave her in peace. She hurried back to the safe house, brushing away her boot prints as she traveled so the soldiers wouldn't be able to track her without dogs. It had been so stupid of her to leave. What if the apartment had been breached in her absence? What if her lover had returned only to find her gone? Once safely inside, she reset the alarm and vowed never to leave again. There was nothing left for her on the surface. Not anymore. Thinking of everything that had been lost, she crawled in bed and cried herself to sleep. She awoke as stars began to appear in the windows. On the screens, in bright white pixels, a message shone. "I'll be back tonight." And so she waited. It became a sort of ritual, laying her clothes out on the bed, putting the water in the kettle. It had taken her hours to get ready the first night. She spilled water on the floor and got a comb stuck in her hair as she scrambled to boil the halibut and rehydrate the wine. Then, when the table was set, there was nothing more she could do except light the candles and eat the figs she had been saving for the occasion. There was a limited amount of everything, particularly fruit, but she wanted this dinner to be perfect, and waited as long as she could before sinking her teeth into the fig's flesh. Even then, she felt guilty. The skin had gotten sticky, and the acids in the juice had eaten their way through the greens until the salad became mushy, the lettuce dark and slimy as the sea. Her sole comfort in these moments was the thought that she had grown all these vegetables herself, that the kale and the mustard greens and the ripe tomatoes had arisen from her own soil, clean, unadulterated soil, free of toxins and fed by the purest water possible, water that had been treated with ultraviolet light rather than disinfectants, so its taste wouldn't be tainted by chemicals. It was thoughtful of her lover to make that change. All the other safe houses used a filtration system that made the water taste sterile. It was comforting to think that she was taken care of. Even after she accepted that her lover wasn't coming, there was still the dinner. There was still the wine and the fish and the lovely bechamel she had made with the rehydrated milk and the last of the Parmesan cheese. After all, she was wearing that dress, the one her lover bought her from France, with the sleeveless arms and naked back, and had a cowl neck, its folds accentuating the soft lines of her throat, and the hard edge of the necklace wrapped so tight around her neck. By the end of the third course, she felt like she was choking. There were cracks in the ceiling. She might not have noticed them, except one morning she woke up yearning for a proper lab with phosphorus and zinc and grad students wearing safety goggles. And to console herself, she laid in bed reading old science journals about plant physiology and the epigenetic influence of oxygen deprivation on the life cycle of bean plants. Then she laid back on a pillow, and there they were, hairline cracks like a root system in the ceiling. For a moment, she thought she could see them growing. It was difficult to say how long they'd been there. If she had to guess, she would say that it had been months. The cracks extended the length of the ceiling and protruded slightly in the center as if taking on water. But the paint was very dry to the touch, and she knew, because her lover had told her, that behind it there was plaster, then foam, then steel, a thick layer of it designed to withstand any blast. If the ceiling were to collapse, it would mean the tectonic plates were shifting, the earth itself packing and unpacking as if under the pressure of an eternal gravedigger whose shovel was seeking the edges of her home, hoping to undermine it. And she did worry that something had come loose along the way, the air ducts pried from their hinges, the stairway drifting farther from the door. If she had but been left the proper tools, she could have investigated the matter, attempted some sort of do-it-yourself fix, but her lover had insisted she have only the most basic equipment and had all but outlawed any science experiment or building project. The apartment systems were very delicate and should not be tampered with, her lovers had said. But what would she do if they failed? In the fall, when the artificial windows gleamed with the light of a billion changing leaves, a tiny glitch in the mainframe resulted in the images being projected inward, like holograms. She could see the lines where the computer mapped the images, connecting dots to form three-dimensional figures, like that of a cat or a tree. She saw a young girl cycling through the kitchen, her pale hair and knitted scarf streaming behind her as in a breeze. It happened that her couch was positioned under a maple tree, and when she curled up under its branches with a cup of tea, its leaves began falling all around her, their luminous, fiery ribs passing quietly through her chest. It lasted 3 hours, maybe 4, until a second glitch, no doubt precipitated by the first, resulted in this faint illusion flickering in and out of sight. For days after, she saw things in the corner of her eye, the laces of a football sailing through the air, the tail of a squirrel twitching fretfully as it counted its nuts. And once, in bed after drinking a package of white wine, she awoke when a pair of headlights burst to life inside her dresser. She had to shield her eyes to see the ghostly outline of a truck emerging through the wall. Someone killed the engine. There was a man sitting at the wheel, fingers lifting the pale ghost of his cigarette as he nodded at an accomplice. There was an exchange of words and a hard crack, like a skull hitting the floor, and then the apparition disappeared, never to return. Her nightmares were waking her up 2-3 times a night. In one, she was locked inside an old building where the only method of escape was to descend a rusty ladder and crawl through the heating ducts to reach sewers. In another, she was gliding through the halls of an enormous palace, admiring the gilded chairs and inlaid mirrors. Suddenly, she sensed she wasn't alone. She ducked into a dressing room where she shut herself inside an antique wardrobe, thinking that she was in danger. Even in the midst of perfect luxury, this was always what she thought. Her dreams had taken on a sinister quality, both bizarre and claustrophobic, as if her subconscious mind were attempting to warn her of something. And then one night, her lover visited her in her dreams. It was impossible to say whether it did or did not happen. Thinking back on it, she remembered dreaming of a gravel road, the crunch of rocks under her shoes as she walked through the parking lot of a dive bar. Inside, she met a man sorting through his dirty laundry. He said, "You shouldn't be here." This was true. She responded, "My girlfriend's going to be here soon." He had no response to this other than to sort his laundry. Suddenly, the scene changed. She found herself standing in the corner of a small triangular room in a stranger's house. She was at a party. She said, "Someone's here," to the sound of knocking at the door, and then there was the feeling of a hand stroking her hair and rolling her over in bed. At the exact moment when bikers crashed through the window and destroyed her terrarium, she tilted her head back, her vision going black as she rose into a slow, inevitable kiss. Her hands had been tucked under the covers, but soon drifted up to rest on her lover's cheeks. When she kissed harder, her lover's tongue caught the corner of her mouth. The next thing she knew, the kiss was over and her lover had pulled back. She asked, "Why did you stop?" Thickly, slowly, as if trying to draw the words from the air and arrange them on her tongue. Her lover materialized in front of her, lips curving into a wan, beneficent smile. "I'm sorry I've been away so long," she cried, her face cracking, then falling like the cliff of a giant iceberg, upending itself in the dark. When her lover started to babble about hard water and the assassins they sent after her, she began the gentle process of making her quiet. Small shushing noises, hands on her cheeks, the words "come here," followed by a kiss or an attempt at one. Her lips meant nothing, only air. Thinking about it after, it occurred to her that she must have pulled too hard and that this was why her lover abruptly pushed her away. Looking at her hand, she found it empty, the heel of her palm warm and soft where her lover's cheek had been. It took a long time to comprehend this. "Where did you go?" "I'm right here." With great effort, she lifted her gaze from her palm to see her lover standing by the bed. "You're here," she breathed. "Are you real? Am I dreaming?" A tremor of betrayal passed over her lover's face, but in his wake there was only sorrow and hesitation as to how to proceed. Her lover knelt, allowing a hand to slide under her shirt. What happened next she did not know. She woke the next morning with her head propped on the staircase, her hand grazing the locked magnesium door. In her dream, she hadn't been able to remember their passcode, so she had slept there, ruined and spent, believing that if she closed her eyes, the dream world and the real world would unravel, and she would know. The war was over. They had lost. In the days and weeks after it happened, she kept turning the dream over in her mind, replaying it as if it were a cherished film written and directed with her edification in mind. "See how much she loves you," this film seems to say. "See, when her skin starts to burn, how her hand smooths away the sweat as if you have a fever." One evening, the apartment system projected the image of her lover onto a chair in the dining room. She forgot herself so thoroughly that she sat and spoke to it for a full half hour before she realized it couldn't respond. It didn't know how. Night after night, her lover appeared in bed, and she was so grateful for this small kindness that she crawled inside the projection's ghostly outline and slept there, heart to heart. She understood now that she would die in this safe house, if not of old age, then of the ceiling caving in, or the pipes bursting, or a gas leak, or some other fault of technology or mechanics. This apartment would keep her alive for as long as it could. Then, when her time came, it would bury her, sealing her forever in a place where the world could not reach her, where she was safe from bombs and pestilence and distrust, free to die in her own time and on her own terms. And when that happens, she will know that she was loved. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. That was phenomenal. I'm going to get your collection as well. You know, been doing this for about 15 months. And if you account for folks who have come back to read more than once, we've had about 100 authors through here at Story Hour. And the genre, speculative fiction, is a pretty huge tent. And I have loved all of our writers, every last one of them. And we've had kind of a sampling from pretty much every corner of speculative fiction. But every now and then, we get an author who really pushes the boundaries of what's possible with this genre or with this collection of genres. And it reminds me personally of why I've spent so much of my time and energy both creating and consuming this stuff. And tonight we get two such authors. So really grateful and feel very privileged to have had you both here this evening. Thank you so much. Really, really lovely work.
Thank you for having us.
That's That's a
Yeah,
wrap.
thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you bet. You bet. So everybody out there, thanks very much for joining us again. Next week, we've got Marion Deeds and Can Wiggins. So please do join us again. And meanwhile, stay safe, take care of yourselves, take care of each other. And we'll see you next time. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.